All right, so I wish I could tell you that a trading strategy was easy and just plug and play. Pretty much I can give you a set of rules and then you can go out and you'll trade it just like me. But unfortunately, that's not the case. We're going to get as close to that as possible, but that was the whole reason I wanted to discuss with you what I call the balance of a strategy. The four things we see on the screen are the balance of any strategy, and each of them affect the other one in a certain way. Let me give you examples of why this is important. For me, I like a higher win rate with my strategies. So I'm okay with dealing with a smaller reward to risk ratio so that I can have a higher win rate and less of a drawdown, although it may not provide me with a huge ROI at the end of the year compared to what I could have with a bigger reward to risk ratio and a smaller win rate. So to wrap all this up, what this really means is that your trading strategy is going to work best if it fits with your trading personality. So your trading personality may be the opposite of me. You may not care about win rate that much in comparison to your overall ROI. So you may be comfortable with a win rate way lower than 55%. And you may, with that being the case, be able to get a larger reward to risk ratio of like a 2-to-1 or higher. Let's say you're comfortable with a 40% win rate. Well, then you might be able to get a bigger reward to risk ratio. For this reason, we're going to be talking about a lot of different ways to take targets, some different ways to optimize strategies so that you can better equip them to fit your trading personality. But as we do that, and before we do that later on in the course, I wanted to talk to you about how each of these things correlate. So let's do that right now. In terms of winning percentage, if you were someone that said, I want a higher winning percentage, let's think about what that would affect. Let's say you want to have a 65% win rate and you don't want to go any lower than that. If that was the case, what would you have to do? Well, you would have to add more confluences. You would have to add more rules. So let's say you add 2 more rules, and now instead of just having 4 rules of a strategy, you have 6 rules in your strategy. What do you think that's going to do to your reward to risk ratio? Well, could do nothing. You could still have the same exact reward to risk ratio, but let's talk about this. In order to get a 65% chance, you will likely have to drop that reward to risk ratio down to a 1-to-1 or maybe even lower. What do you think it's going to do to your frequency of trades? Well, if we think about this logically, if you're now looking at using 6 rules instead of 4 rules, your frequency of trades is going to drop dramatically because you're having to find more confluence to place one single trade. So although it may just be easy sounding to say I want to get a 65% win rate, all the things you're going to have to do in order to get that 65% win rate are very important. Again, if you wanted to have a higher win rate, you would have to add to your rules, you would have to drop your reward to risk ratio, and your frequency of trades would drop dramatically. So these are the 4 things that balance out any strategy. They are the win rate of the strategy, the amount of rules you have in that strategy, your reward to risk ratio, and your frequency or number of trades. And again, each of these matters so much. Let's say you want a higher reward to risk ratio. We kind of discussed this earlier. Say you want a 2-to-1 reward to risk. Well, if that's the case, you have to be willing to lose in terms of your winning rate. Your winning rate is going to drop the higher your reward to risk ratio is. So your win rate will drop. Your rules may stay exactly the same. There's really no correlation there. And your frequency of trades may stay nearly the same. But if you're looking for a 2-to-1, your frequency of trades may drop as well because you're having to wait longer before you hit those 2-to-1 reward to risk targets. So that's an example of how changing your reward to risk ratio is going to be affecting things like your win rate and your frequency of trades. Now, let's say you're someone that is not okay with 15 trades per month. Sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. PM stands for per month. So let's say you want to have 25 trades per month. What are you going to have to do? Well, you're going to have to sacrifice your number of rules, because that's a direct correlation. The number of rules you have, the less rules you have, the more often you're going to be able to place trades because the less amount of factors have to come together. Hopefully this is making sense. The less amount of factors that have to come together for your trading opportunity to happen, the more trades you can have. And if you drop your rules, that directly correlates with your win rate. So your win rate's going to go down. So if you want 25 trades a month, you may have to deal with something like a 50% win rate, and you could still potentially get the same reward to risk ratio, but you're going to have to make sacrifices for all of these things. And the reason I wanted to point this out is because I get questions all the time. Stephen, what if I added this to the strategies that we're talking about? What if I added this? And I have traders asking me if they add rules, and I love that they're that curious, and I think that's an awesome thing to do if you want to optimize the strategy more. But understand in your process of adding rules, for each rule you add, you are going to take away a certain amount of trades. Your frequency is going to go down. So what I mean by all of this is, in terms of the change of your ROI, a lot more goes into it than just your win rate. A lot more goes into it than just your reward to risk ratio. You have to think about your frequency of trades as well. And you have to consider that with any optimization that you do, and consider that with the reward to risk ratio that you're planning to take with your trades. I get asked a lot as well, Stephen, I hear across the board that I need to have a 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio no matter what. Well, what I've realized is having a 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio drops my winning percentage well below 50% on nearly any strategy I've ever tried to use it with. And if I have a strategy that has a win rate of 55% and a 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio, it has so many rules. It might have 10 rules that my frequency of trades is like 2 per month. That's not even worth it to me. So all of these things need to be considered while you're optimizing. I did want to give you guys a brief overview of what I consider the balance of any trading strategy. That way, if you consider optimizing these trading strategies yourself, or consider different targets and stop losses for a better or worse reward to risk ratio, or if you want more of a win rate, now you know the different things you need to consider while doing that optimization. Next up, we're taking a look at the full strategy. I call it the 50 EMA P strategy. That stands for 50 EMA pullback strategy. Let's take a look at that strategy, all the rules involved. By the end of that, you will have one full strategy. You'll have that full checklist for this strategy, and you'll know one of the strategies that we're going to be trading throughout this section of the course. I'll see you guys in the next video.